The sun shining in the blue and endless sky symbolizes hope. Wow. You hear a line like that and you think, okay, this is going to be a nice, gentle talk. But what's so fascinating is that this beautiful, disarming quote is actually the opening to a speech that lays out a really demanding, almost radical vision for a new America.
So today, we're going to break down this incredible speech by Myung from all the way back in 1977. It was delivered in Pasadena, California, and it's a talk that literally begins with the weather, but believe me, it ends with a full-blown blueprint for a nation's spiritual reconstruction.
So before he gets into any of the heavy stuff, any doctrine, Moon just starts by connecting with everyone in the room on the most simple human level. He's talking about the beauty of California, the sun, the sky, and, the spirit of the young people there. But here's the thing. This wasn't just idle chit-chat. Not at all. It was a very deliberate strategy. He actually said he was using this kind of poetic language to create harmony, to relax a room that he described as being completely stiff and frozen. So this was all about breaking the ice.
Okay, so once the ice is broken, he makes this hard pivot to his central diagnosis. And you've got to remember the context here, right? This is 1970s America. The country is grappling with the fallout from Vietnam and Watergate. It was a time of deep, deep cultural questioning. And it's right into this environment that he introduces his idea of a society that was just floating, dangerously adrift, without any kind of anchor.
And this quote really gets to the heart of his argument. He saw America as a place where ideals came to die. Not because the ideals themselves were bad, but because the culture just didn't have the deep foundational roots needed to actually sustain them.
And he goes even further than that. He suggests that this rootless culture had created a whole generation that took everything for granted: food, shelter, even their parents. A generation, in his view, that had totally lost its ability to feel real gratitude and appreciation.
To really hammer this point home, he brings in this really powerful metaphor of flesh versus bone. On one side, you've got the flesh. It's superficial, it's temporary, it's like morning dew. That's how we saw American culture. But on the other side, you have the bone. That's the structural framework, the invincible foundation that he believed was completely missing.
So, after diagnosing the problem, he offers a solution, a prescription. And let me tell you, it is not an easy one. He argues that if you want to build those deep roots, if you want to become truly invincible, you're going to need a whole new kind of discipline.
Which of course leads us to the crucial question at the very heart of his speech. If the whole problem is a lack of depth, what's the process for creating it? What does this discipline he's talking about actually look like?
The answer he proposed was an incredibly rigorous spiritual training, and the entire point was to prove that your commitment to a higher purpose was stronger than the most basic, most primal demands of your own body.
And he laid out 3 core disciplines. First, you have to conquer hunger through fasting, to prove your love for God is greater than your love for food. Second, you have to conquer sleep, pushing way past exhaustion to show your commitment. And third, you have to conquer physical love, to show a higher, more spiritual kind of devotion.
So what's the theological why behind all this? I mean, why was such intense suffering necessary? Well, according to Moon, it was the only way to heal a fundamental conflict that exists at the core of every single person.
He frames this whole struggle through the lens of the fall of man. The idea of humanity's separation from God. In his teaching, this event created a permanent internal war. The main battleground wasn't somewhere out in the world. It was right inside each of us.
The conflict basically breaks down like this. Your mind is aligned with God, always seeking something eternal and unchanging. Your body, on the other hand, is aligned with what he calls Satan, always looking for that fleeting pleasure and constantly betraying the mind's higher goals. So the whole point of the discipline was to force the body to finally submit to the mind.
And this is the absolute key to everything. He argued that your own willpower just isn't enough to win this internal war. The only force powerful enough to unite that warring mind and body was the pure, perfect, and all-consuming love of God.
So now let's look at how this really intense individual journey was meant to scale up into a mission for all of society. Because this was never just about personal salvation. It was about building a whole new world, and it was going to start in America.
Those people who could endure the training, who could unite their mind and body, they would kind of graduate. They would stop being part of the floating flesh and become the very bones that America's rotting culture so desperately needed.
And their role was immense. They were meant to be the new foundation, the structural support
for a rebuilt America. He described their collective energy as a force that would attract God with the awesome power of Niagara Falls, sparking a movement that would eventually cover the entire globe.
The mission wasn't just reform, it was a total reconstruction, from the skeleton out. As Moon put it so directly, the bones of American culture are rotting. Only bone is adequate. He saw his followers as the essential framework needed to prevent a complete and total cultural collapse. So, the ultimate takeaway is really this: the suffering, the discipline, the internal battle, it was all in service of a massive global vision. By forging a new spiritual backbone for America, they believed they were laying the groundwork for a unified world, one held together by a love that had been tested and proven.
And that leaves us with a final and pretty challenging question. Moon's 1977 vision presents suffering not as something you should avoid, but as the actual tool for building an invincible society. And it really forces us to ask, what is the true foundation of a strong culture? And what price is worth paying to create it?